Hey everyone, Geophysicist Stefan Burns here. We just had a mud volcano explode in Colombia, and this is notable because this mud volcano wasn't that big, certainly not one of the larger ones in Colombia, of which there's more than 100. The Geologic Institute there tracks them as best they can, but they are very active and also very mobile. So a mud volcano can suddenly burst into being. It can also go extinct very quickly. This is not a normal volcano with magma and then lava. In fact, what we're seeing here is you have this flow of hydrothermal fluids and also methane coming up from the deep earth. And sometimes you get a really big bubble of methane to come up. If that lights, and they're typically quite hot too, right? If that lights, boom, there is your explosion. And so this mud volcano in Colombia, not that large. There are others that are much larger, more significant. This could perhaps be a start of a wave if there is some larger force that is coming up from the deep earth, some movement of methane due to larger geologic dynamics, and we could expect more of this to occur. Let me show you on the map where this happened. Here we see Google Earth, and here is the country of Colombia, and there is our mud volcano. So not one of the big ones, but, well, it's the big one in the past 12 hours. This just occurred, and thankfully, doesn't seem anyone was hurt from this, though there have been some livestock that was lost. There have been evacuations taking place. And again, people don't know if this is going to continue to build up this methane and effectively explode. These are huge explosions, which is why it's really important to be mindful of this if you live in a mud volcano area. Not that many places in the world have them, but they're more common than you may think. Azerbaijan is the country with the most mud volcanoes, but I'd say Colombia is right up there, having about 100 mud volcanoes. So this is the sort of explosion that can occur. And talking about Azerbaijan, in fact, we saw some activity from a mud volcano in Azerbaijan just recently. So this was back on the 30th of January. Let me show you this. This is pretty insane. Here we have a mud volcano that exploded back on January 30th in Azerbaijan. You see the methane coming up. Basically, it lit up, exploded like crazy. Is this a sign of there being a more widespread release of methane from the deep earth up to the surface, and therefore we're going to see more mud volcanoes activate? That is an open question. I don't know. But the fact that we had this occur just about, 3 weeks ago now, not a little bit more than 3 weeks ago, a massive mud volcano in Azerbaijan, and now a new mud volcano explosion from a very small diminutive mud volcano in Colombia actually having this massive explosion. Maybe there's a new trend that's starting here. So it's important to be aware of the many different types of earth events that can occur. You have avalanches and landslides, you have volcanic eruptions, you have mud volcano eruptions, you have earthquakes, geomagnetic storms. All of these things interact with each other some way. Some of them are more one directional. For example, a geomagnetic storm, you have magnetic flux on the planet as a result of a solar impact. Well, if you have briny hydrothermal fluids, right, they're salt laden, so they have a charge, they can then resonate with that fluctuating magnetic field, and perhaps that causes changes like we see here in some sort of domino effect, right? So we're seeing mud volcano explosions around the world right now, and it's not isolated to just one location. This is Azerbaijan, January 30th of this year. We just now have Colombia, February 26th of this year. So things are certainly heating up. So you may be asking yourself, what is a mud volcano? How is it different than a regular volcano? Well, we're not talking about magma and lava here. We're talking more about water and sediment. So you have this natural flow of hydrothermal fluids. This is hot fluids. There's a lot of dissolved gas within them, a lot of dissolved salts and more. And of course, as that's coming up, depending on the geology, it'll carry a lot of sediment with it, and so you get mud. And here we have an example of a very tiny mud volcano. This is, just like basically right there, you can see this. And we see this bubbling coming up, and they release gases. Often it's CO2, but it can also be methane. and that's why you get these mud volcano explosions, is when you have a big release of methane up through the conduit of the mud volcano. There's enough heat there typically to light that thing on fire and cause a massive explosion, methane being a very powerful hydrocarbon gas that has the potential for big explosions, much more powerful, for example, than like gasoline. So this is a tiny example of a mud volcano, but let's go here and look at Torgay volcano. This is mud volcano in Azerbaijan, the world's largest. You'll notice that this is a big mud volcano. I mean, this is similar in size to actually many real volcanoes. Azerbaijan has the most mud volcanoes in the world. You see the slopes of this all being built up by this mud, this sediment over time. And this effectively is just a really big conduit and passageway for these sort of hydrothermal fluids and gases to come up. And so when you get a big burp of methane through this guy, then you know you're going to have a big explosion. And we just again had that one recently on January 30th in Azerbaijan, though it wasn't from this mud volcano. But this shows the scale of this. We also know, for example, if we're talking about methane, that there's increasing amounts of methane being released from melting permafrost. We also have these crazy methane sinkholes in, for example, Siberia and Russia and other parts of the world. We have evidence of sometimes there being massive methane burps and bubbles that come up from the ocean, and that's affected planes before. That's one of the ideas as it relates to the Bermuda Triangle, is that sometimes these methane bubbles come up and that can cause some problems. So there seems to be this regular discharge of methane from the deeper parts of the earth, though exactly how or why, kind of a mystery. I mean, we know that there's a lot of hydrocarbons in our planet and they want to come up, right? They're fairly light. They want to escape up into the atmosphere, so that will naturally drive a flow. But there seems to be a bit more of a like flow renewal of them than we may attribute to natural geologic processes based on our current understanding. And we're seeing methane increase in quantity coming up from the earth as a result of climate change. So as that continues to occur and we continue to have these geophysical energies progress forward, we could see more and more of these sort of mud volcano eruptions. Thankfully, these mud volcanoes typically are not in well-populated areas because they are known to do this, but still it is also a risk factor regardless, because there are people that happen to be nearby. Some of them are tourist attractions, things of that nature. So big mud volcano eruption in Colombia today. We've had one just within the past month in Azerbaijan. We'll have to wait and see if there are more to come. That's it for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. I've been your host, Stefan Burns. On this channel, we cover what is happening energetically here on Earth. So this is earthquakes, this is volcanic activity, mud volcano activity, geomagnetic storms, severe weather, also solar activity, space weather, planetary alignments and planetary resonances, interstellar and cosmic forces. I bring all that together and present videos almost daily. So if you like the sound of that, then please subscribe. Hope to see you here. Smash that thumbs up button to help the channel grow. Wishing each and every single one of you well. Please take care of yourselves. I'll see you all in the next video.